All right. Hey, folks. So we're now on part 3 of the February Q&A. So let's get straight into it and see how many we can get through. Firstly, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. And if you'd like to work with me on your own strength and physique goals, there's a link in the description. And if you've never joined me for one of these before, I do these every month. There'll be a post on my YouTube and on my Instagram. So follow me on there, Deadlifts, and you can answer a question and I will give you a decent answer as best I can. Okay, so we're starting with this question from Max Bergren, and Max is asking about the conjugate method. And I did a conjugate series, a 4 or 5 part series on conjugate method, and he wants to know a bit more about it. He says his first question is regarding the max effort day. He said, should I stick to the same exercise for the back off sets after the main lift, or should I change it up? I say you can stick to the same one. That works very well. It's just a nice, convenient way of doing things. Particularly if you're not super advanced, I think it's fine. So let's say you max out on, I don't know, floor press 1 week, maybe a close grip bench a couple of weeks later, and then a slingshot bench. Great. Do your back offs on those lifts, and that's fine. So either something like 3x5 or 3x8 or one top set of 5, however you want to run it, depending on your own volume tolerance and what you like to do. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way to do it. I have a couple of clients running conjugate method right now, and they're both doing that. So they're running back offs on the same exercise relative to what they max on. So yeah, it's a good way to go. But those two are also changing the max effort exercise every single week, and we're using 3-week waves. So we'll have exercise rotation of 3 exercises for upper, 3 for lower. We'll hit those and then back offs on those, and we'll change week in, week out. So 3 variations across 3 weeks, and then do the same 3 weeks again and the same 3 weeks again. Every now and again, we might change one of the lifts just to balance out things if we feel that we need something in a different area. These are both advanced guys, so they're fairly strong, so they need a bit more variation. But that's kind of how I would do things. Secondly, what are the biggest, most common pitfalls that you see people doing with the conjugate method that I should avoid? Lack of continuity. So when I first heard of the conjugate method and I had experimented with implementing it, this was way back in about 2003. Okay, Louis was talking about the conjugate method, and it was one of the first things on the internet. So back in 2000, we had a website called deepsquatter.com, and there was a list of powerlifting articles on there, as well as the forums. But in terms of formal education on powerlifting, that was what we had. And on there was a lot of stuff from Louis, a lot of stuff from like Corte, the German coach, a lot of Smolov stuff, which is the Russian stuff, some of the English powerlifting guys who were very similar to the American powerlifting guys, some stuff by Ed Cohn. But essentially, there was a ton of conjugate stuff on there. So I heard about it way back then, and I attempted it previously. Now, while I was on my sort of best run of strength, and I eventually got to like a 3-plate bench and 4-plate squat and more than that, there was another guy on the same forum I used to be a part of, and he was also logging his conjugate training. Within a year, I had gotten as strong as him and stronger, while his strength has stagnated and gone down. And we were both young guys, both very well committed and trying hard. He was using a conjugate method. His biggest pitfall was that he waited far too long between variations to test them again. So he would wait probably 3 months between a variation to test again. Now, within those 3 months, whatever he did, it wasn't enough to get stronger in the lifts he was trying to get stronger in. But the problem is, well, that's a waste of 3 months. And potentially the high degree of variation was just a waste in and of itself. So the way that I do that with clients is, as well as I've just explained, I will have a much tighter variation. So I'll have a block of 3 weeks. I will include 3 max effort exercises and a continuous row of dynamic effort exercises, normally regular squats, regular deadlifts, both for higher upper ranges, more like 5x5. So there's 2 things there. Firstly, with the max effort day, stick to a tight series of variations. 3 is plenty, you know. So I'll give you a real life example. We've got one of the guys right now. He is using, I don't know, off the top of my head. I'll give you a made up example. I can't remember off the top of my head what he's using, but let's say, for example, you were weak off your chest. Okay, you're a raw lifter and you're weak off your chest. I might use 2 variations of the bench which target the power off the chest. So maybe like a dead stop bench, which would be good, and maybe a feet up bench. And then I might target one for the overloading work. So something like a slingshot bench or a bench with bands against bands, something like that. Okay. I don't normally do board work, but board work could be okay as well, I guess. So those would be the variations I would use, and I would just rotate them in 3-week blocks. So first week off the chest, second week feet up bench, final week slingshot, and then repeat and repeat and repeat, and just get better at them over time. And that's a nice way of doing things, because every 3 weeks you get a chance to improve. It's not long enough to go without getting considerably detrained on a movement, but also it's not long enough to go to evaluate whether you're making progress or not. And if you're only evaluating every 3 months about whether you're making progress or not, well, I like the phrase trust in the process, but there's trusting in the process and they're just walking in blind. So I don't like people not checking their progress more than every few weeks. I think that's vital. Second thing is, as I briefly mentioned just then, is the DE days, high reps. 2s and 3s they're just not enough for most people. I mean, I've got a guy in the book right now, he's benching squatting mid fours, and even he's doing the 5x5 and it's working for him. You don't need to go with the 8 triples, 8 doubles kind of thing. I would stick to 5x5 and just stick to a 1 minute rest period. 5x5 on squats and deadlifts on your DE day is brutal. You won't be able to do much more, but it works really well. So, and just wave them every 3 weeks. So go up to a decent weight by the start of by a 3-week block. Next 3-week block, back the weight down a little bit and then just push forward again. Sort of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully that is useful. And the rest of it is just target weaknesses. I also think on that, try to avoid too many isolation exercises unless you're very, very strong. And even if you are, I would prefer, I know Louis does a lot of single joint isolation exercises. I'm not a massive fan of that stuff for the natural guy. I think for you guys out there who are just regular Joes, you're not smashing a bunch of drugs, you just want to get a bit stronger, aim to have the majority of your work and strength improved via the compounds. Don't worry too much about the isolations. So ironically, for the enhanced guy, compounds are more important. And for the natural guy, compounds are more important, but we're talking about 2 different compounds. Right. So next question from Sam. Sam says, Sam Barker, question 1, how much of a deficit should my deficit deadlifts be? Yeah, it's a good question. I think you can progressively increase them. So here's the general, here's my general view on things. So I think when you get very good at stiff leg deadlifting, you should go to a deficit. Okay, I don't necessarily think you should go straight to a deficit. You can get a lot out of just regular stiff legs from the floor. Now, when you're experienced with them and you're also quite good at deadlifts, so maybe you're a long-limbed, long-arm, long-leg lifter, and you're quite efficient at doing deadlifts, then at that stage, sure, go on to a deficit, but start low. I start most people off with just a plate deadlift, and that can completely take the place of your regular stiff leg deadlifts. Now, over time, they'll get very easy too, until the point where the weight starts to get quite difficult. Add more from there. I used to do deficits up until the point where I was pretty much pulling off my shoelaces. So, clear your feet. Obviously, you don't break your foot on the way down, but clear your feet with enough room. And then, yeah, you should be able to increase the range over time. But I would just try and get the most out of every level that you can before you move down. So firstly, straight regular stiff legs are great. After that, go to maybe a 1 plate deficit. Then after that, maybe a bumper plate. But that's about all you should need. So rather than think of it as, okay, what is the best deficit? Think of it as a continuum. Start with regulars and progressively move the range of motion down. That's how we used to do it back in the day, and it's a time-proven way of doing things. It works well. I mean, yeah, we were doing this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's a great way of doing it. He said he's forgotten his second question, but it'll come back to me. Okay. Louis says, I'm currently running your Barbarian program. Awesome. Cool. Thank you. What I find is that I'm struggling with progression in pull-ups and chins. Yeah, fair enough. Oh, actually, no. I think I've answered this question before. I think I answered it yesterday. I think I have. I forgot to tick it off. I normally tick these off as I'm going along. Anyway, right. Raphael says, hello, Faz. I drive a lot for work, and it feels as if my right leg, especially knees, are turning outwards more and more. Okay. I have had something similar in the past. I had a job 13, 14 years ago where I had to commute a lot. And yeah, my right leg, on the side of the on the accelerator side, it was started to go out a little bit because I would just be on the road for ages. I'm also feeling my knees discomfort. Is there anything I can do to fix this? I squat with a barbell, sissy squat, etc. Yeah, Raphael, quick solution to that is single leg work. Okay, single leg work will help you a lot. Now, yeah, you are probably more of a long-limbed, long-arm lifter, I'm going to guess. And I think this is fairly common because that's what happened to me. I was driving about an hour and a half each way, so about 2 or 3 hours per day for many, many months at a time. And yeah, eventually I did get a bit of an imbalance. And it took me a while to correct, but what I had to do was I had to move away from barbells for a while and go to single leg work, unilateral work. Feel free to still do a little bit of barbell squatting, but I would definitely include a lot more unilateral work. So single leg presses are my absolute favorite unilateral work. You can get nice and deep on those with nice and control. Split squats are okay as well because you can get nice and deep on them with added hip flexion. So they're pretty good too. So yeah, that's kind of where I would kind of move you towards is the single leg work. That tends to stabilize each leg quite well. Yeah, strengthen those areas up. Okay, Oi Sam says, hi Faz, I'm finding it hard to progress on pressing movements. I mainly use a dumbbell press and chest press as it suits my structure. I wouldn't say I've reached intermediate strength yet session to session sometimes I don't get an increase in reps. I'm progressing well on all movements and in a calorie surplus that's generous, so that should mean you're gaining body weight. I'm also doing 12 hard working sets per week. Would adding volume be the best way to speed up progression? Well, Sam, you've said that you're in a surplus. Are you gaining body weight? That is the key determinant of whether you're in a surplus or not. If you're gaining body weight and your reps progression is slowing down, well, there's a few things here that are a bit confusing, Sam. So I'm just going to run through the possibilities before I give you like a final answer. Firstly, you've said you've not listed your level of strength. So I think that's problematic because it'd be helpful to know how strong you actually are, what you consider to be intermediate, beginner, etc. Like if you're really nowhere close to being beginner, like you're pressing, 40-pound dumbbells in each hand for chest presses, then you're really weak. And odds are you're probably going to be better off in a bench press. I think the first thing is a lot of beginners tend to be like afraid of the barbell, weirdly enough. And if you get my beginner ebook, the Noob beginner ebook, it's linked down below. You'll see I make a strong case for the barbell. I had a guy in comments once a couple of months back, and he was saying the barbell lifts are dangerous. Like, they're just not. I don't know where this comes from, and maybe you guys can help me out with that. But where is this idea that the barbells are dangerous for a beginner come from? I don't understand. They are far and away the best and most efficient way to get stronger when you're a beginner. The only reason that you might avoid them as you get stronger and stronger is your strength would make mixing my words. Your strength would make frequent use of the barbell problematic. But that's not going to happen for a long time, and it's probably not going to happen at all unless you start going on drugs, steroids, and that can cause problems in and of its own right. So I don't know where that comes from. You said it's the pressing barbell isn't suited to your structure. How do you know? I mean, if you're not even intermediate yet, how do you know that? And I don't mean like, well, what's your reasoning? I mean, what I mean is, how can you trust your reasoning? If you're not even an intermediate yet, how can you trust what your reasoning is based on? You don't know much yet. Not to be disrespectful, I'm not trying to be offensive, but you're not even intermediate. You don't know what's good for you yet. You don't. You've got no idea. It's kind of like going to school on the first day of nursery and saying, well, I don't want to do this subject because I don't think it's good for me. You don't know anything yet. I don't get that. What is that? That's weird. So no, I don't know. Unless there's something actually like physically, some sort of physical disability, I don't really get. The first thing, I think it's more likely you've read somewhere that barbells are dangerous. You've read that you've got longer limbs or something, and then you've just decided that it's bad for you. And so now what you don't realize is you're hamstringing your progress by using dumbbells and a machine. It's just not good for you. And it's no wonder you're not gaining strength. You're just not training that hard because you can't with those movements. Balance is far more of an issue. So second thing is, you've said, I don't always get an increase in reps, but you do sometimes. So that might not even be a stall. I mean, it's not even a stall. So it's not a plateau. You're still progressing. You just say some sessions you don't. So second thing is, it's not even a stall. So I'm not sure what that means either. Like, are you maybe stalling 1 week out of every 4, but if you're still progressing, that's still progress. So I don't know. Third thing that you said, which raised some eyebrows from the ear, is I'm in a calorie surplus as generous, but you don't mention your weight gain. Are you gaining weight? A calorie surplus by definition means you're gaining weight, but it's kind of like when people say to me, I'm in a calorie deficit, but I'm not losing weight. It's like, well, you're not in a calorie deficit then, because otherwise you would be losing weight. So if you're in a calorie surplus, are you gaining weight? And also you say, I'm also doing 12 hardworking sets per week. Good. Would adding volume be the best way to speed up progression? Well, assuming we've taken care of those 3 things, okay, then the next thing I'm going to say is applicable if you've taken care of those first 3 things. Okay, so the next thing is this. My basic rule of thumb is if you are not getting stronger consistently and you are recovered fine, like you don't feel sore or anything, then add volume. If you are not progressing and you feel sore and beat up, then take volume away. Quite simple when you think about it that way. Yeah. All right, that's my answer for that. Hopefully that you took that in the right way that it was meant. I don't mean to rip you on that. It's just there are a few oddities with what you said. It may just be your wording, maybe a language barrier, but I need to be sure of that. I'm just trying to help. So no offense intended, but I think there's some questions to be asked there. Okay, Rook says, love your channel, keep it up. What's your favorite music band? Geez. I've got quite an eclectic taste. So well, I'm a 90s kid, right? So I quite like old school hip hop. So like Tupac, Biggie, that kind of stuff is awesome. But I also very much like vocals. So I was a massive fan of Jeff Buckley when I was a kid, like at university. Mostly because I like Jeff Buckley because he's an awesome voice. I loved his voice. And I thought it was quite interesting because years later, I found out that he was taught and influenced by another musician who I really like. There's a guy called Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who's amazing as well, has amazing vocals. So yeah, these days, I don't know. I don't listen to a great deal these days. Nowadays, I just listen to sort of generic hard house, if I'm working out, or rap. The gym that I go to currently it's a private gym and it has a lot of rap music playing. I quite like that kind of stuff. To be honest, I don't listen to as much music nowadays as I used to. A lot of times I'll just be listening to a podcast if I'm at the gym or if I'm on the way to the gym. So yeah, hopefully that sort of. There's a few other ones that I like. Because I'm British as well. I'm quite a big fan of Simply Red. I like them. I think they're pretty cool. I think Mick Hucknall's great. Also quite a big fan of George Michael. I think he's awesome. I think he's got a great voice, like mega talented. Such a shame when he passed away. Yeah, Prince. I'm a huge Prince fan. Prince is amazing. Like, what a talent. Voice, guitars. I'd say Prince is probably one of the most talented artists ever. Like ever. Just what he can do with his voice, instruments is David Bowie. Insane. So good. Yeah, that kind of genre, I guess. Old school. All right. Yoshi says, how much do you think one is potentially missing out on in regards to muscle gain when eating 1 or 2 meals a day versus the generally recommended 3? Meal timing and maximizing muscle protein synthesis is just something I'm very interested in and curious in your thoughts on the topic. Yeah, we have some pretty good data on that now, Yoshi. So the data seems to suggest that 3 to 4 is about optimal. 1 to 2 probably isn't optimal because you're not getting consistent muscle protein synthesis throughout the day. Now, bear in mind, these are just feedings. They're not including snacks. So if you have 2 meals and a snack, that for the purpose of research, that counts as 3 meals. So I think most people are having about 3-4 meals. I mean, the average is apparently more like 8 to 14 servings a day, or something like that. But yeah, I'd say 3 to 4 is what the research points to as the generally recommended amount as the best. If you go too far down one end, so the 1-2 meals, you're just not getting efficient use of growing. However, 1 or 2 meals a day might provide other benefits which you're interested in, like appetite control and ability to control your calories, stuff like that. So there's a bit of a wash there. If you go too far the other direction, like 5 or 6 meals a day, oftentimes for most regular people that I work with, it becomes impractical because the meals become too small. 1, too small to be satisfying, but 2, they become too small. So you're not eating enough protein per meal to really hit maximum protein synthesis. So I had a girl came to me last year. She was her breakfast from her old coach was something like 3 egg whites, and that was pretty nuts. It was like just 3 egg whites. So it wasn't anywhere near enough protein to actually do a great deal in her body. So I immediately put her on about 3 or 4 meals, and she felt better on it because the meals are more satisfying. But I also think she would have been growing better as well. So yeah, there seems to be a happy medium. 3 to 4 is about right. And I just from a coaching experience point of view, most people that I have under 200 pounds are on about 3 meals a day. I have a bunch of guys who are a lot bigger. Some guys in the 240 to 260 range. Some of them are just big. I have one guy, 2 guys who are just big bodybuilder guys, and they're in the 240 to 260 range. And they are eating more meals, like 4 or 5, but they have substantial meals. So oftentimes, 3 or 4 meals is the best way to go for most regular people. You've got to make a very good case for going over that. And I think for going under that, you've got to have your reasons, which are probably related to health, calorie management, stuff like that. I'm on about 2 meals per day and maybe a snack before bed. That's kind of my rough schedule. Meal at 12, meal at 6, and then usually something before bed is about the way that I run things. So about 100 grams of protein at 12, I know is a lot, but that's what I like. About another 100 at 6 p.m. and then about 30 to 40 or to 50 before bed. So that's kind of my rough schedule. That I should say, because everyone's going to freak out, that level of protein is just because I prefer having a lot of protein. It leaves me less hungry. But I think, the usual 0.8 grams per body weight is about right. Anyway, what do you recommend? This is one Nkane. What do you recommend as far as sugar intake goes? I find I can get near 100 grams some days when I eat a lot of fruit. All right. Now, I'm going to give you 2 answers here. One is more from like a scientific point of view. There's a few factors we need to look at here. Firstly, what does it actually matter if calories are controlled? It doesn't matter much, okay? Because overall, if your calories are within range for either losing weight or maintaining weight or whatever, you are providing your body with enough calories to get used up throughout the day. So you're not going to have a bunch of sugar floating around your bloodstream, causing trouble, basically, because it's going to be used. So the calories are the main thing. So the science would say from that point of view, it makes a lot more sense just simply to focus on your calories, focus on macros. Now, the other thing that comes into play is where you get your sugar from. Now, you've specifically mentioned fruit. Now, fruit is consistently associated with positive health. So in the research, in the data. So in general, it shouldn't matter whether you're getting your carbs from. If they're sugar from fruit, it shouldn't matter. Now, from a more practical point of view, because oftentimes the practice doesn't always reflect the research, I don't coach anyone to go excessive in terms of sugar intake when they're just general lifestyle clients. Like I said, I have some bodybuilder clients who are just very large and their output is insane. They will be eating a lot of calories and a lot of carbs per day just to get their weight up. For most regular people, and I think if you're asking a question like this, you're probably just a regular guy who enjoys training like me. For most regular guys, I would encourage you to use whole nutritious foods. So fruit is good, vegetables are great, rather than get your calories from elsewhere, like simple sugars, processed sugars, stuff like that, simply because you've got a couple of things. And this is just from my experience. The ratio of carbs to protein, firstly, tends to influence people's appetites. If you have trouble with appetite, eating a lot of sugar, even if it's from fruit, doesn't tend to help. I know I'm going to get slammed on this, but I'm just giving you guys my experience. Like, this is my hands-on real life experience as a coach. For a lot of people, fruit and in excessive amounts, when you're hitting up to 100 grams of sugar per day, can lead to appetite spikes. Just what I see. Okay. Now, for somebody who's very sedentary and has got an appetite which is higher than what they want their body to look like, oftentimes it helps to try and get the majority of their carbs through vegetables, and by doing so, the carbs are naturally going to come down. Again, nothing wrong with carbs. When you talk about this subject, there's so many provisos you have to make, because I'm not trying to demonize carbs. I'm just giving people my real life experience. So oftentimes if you have issues with appetite, it pays to increase the protein and it pays to decrease the carbs. And sometimes in those sort of moments, it can often pay to increase the fat levels as well to compensate for the low carbs. Most people aren't doing enough activity to warrant a lot of carbs. Now, I don't recommend low carb intake. I don't think that's a great idea, but something more moderate. And for a lot of people, between 50 to 100 grams of carbs seems to be enough. It keeps them out of ketosis, but it gives them energy and it gives them enough oomph for their workouts as well. That's roughly what I see. For the very big guys who are looking to gain weight, 200, 300, 400, 500 is not uncommon. Like when I was a large bulking bodybuilder, it was not uncommon for me to eat 500 grams of carbs per day. That's only 2,000 calories. And if you're eating 4,000, well, that's quite normal. But for the majority of people, that's the ratio that tends to be useful from what I see with people, working with people. So yeah, I think I'm not really a massive, it's a difficult one. I think all I would do is I would encourage everyone to find their own method to control their appetite and to reach their goals. Bearing in mind, the number one thing is calorie control. So for you, Nkane, what does that fruit do to you? Does it spike your appetite? Well, if it does, then you know you've got to cut back on it. Okay. If it's fine and you feel great and you go, oh, this is fantastic. It doesn't spike my appetite. It fills me up. It's great. Have more fruit. It's good for you. I mean, fruit's great. Fruit, vegetables, meat, fantastic. Great to eat as much as you like. As long as it doesn't spike your appetite, fine. I don't have an inherent problem with sugar from fruit at all. It's fine. Fruit is consistently associated with positive outcomes. All I was trying to say back then was that if the fruit spikes your appetite, and it can for some people, despite what the research says, it's a very real thing, then it's possibly good to pull back on that. I've had people, for example, eat nothing but a meat and vegetable diet. As soon as they add in fruit, they feel more hungry. So for them, it's not a good choice. So hopefully that was a pretty decent answer to that. I just tried to give you a decent answer. So to summarize, there's nothing inherently wrong with sugar in your diet, especially when it comes from fruit. Okay. But you as an individual, it would be worth noting the foods which suppress your appetite versus the foods which enhance your appetite and finding a balance for life. Okay. Right. We'll do one more question. Luke says, what are your thoughts on having a large calorie deficit 2 days a week and eating around maintenance the other days? Similar to Brad Pilon's Eat, Stop, Eat. Yeah, no, great stuff. Oftentimes this is what I do. I do this with my prep clients quite a lot. So I still contest prep a lot of bodybuilding clients. I have about 6 on the books right now, all competing this year. With a lot of them, the strategy that I will use is to have regular eating days followed by low days. And quite simply, the number of low days will just increase per week over towards as we get closer and closer to the competition and as we need to lose more and more fat. So yeah, what I would do is rather than a fasting day, because that's problematic, I think fasting day, full 24 hours will induce muscle loss as well, particularly when you're really lean, as for these contest prep bodybuilders. What I do is a PSMF day, which is a protein sparing modified fast. You essentially just fulfill your protein requirements and then you add some very, very lean, low calorie vegetables alongside it. Works great. So that is a PSMF. Feel free to look it up. Protein sparing modified fast. And it's a good method. Just 2 days per week, go PSMF. Ideally try and match those with 2 days you don't go to the gym. And it's a great way of, burning fat off. If you're looking just to maintain your weight, then just 1 day a week is great. If you're looking to have this as an actual fat loss routine, start with 1 and then push it to 2, push it to 3, and just see what you can get away with without getting absolutely famished and really hungry. So start slow and then build up over time as you need. All right, Luke, hopefully that was useful. But that's it's a great method. It's something I use consistently and have done for years. It's part of my prep method. And it works great because you still have, a few days, at least a few days per week of eating normally. So the problem that I have with a lot of diet coaches is they'll just progressively just slash calories to the bone every day. So every single day you wake up and go, ugh, diet day. It's not good. You've got to have enough energy to work out and retain your muscle. Like the guys that I've prepped on that type of approach have retained a lot of muscle. And that's the number one thing that kills you if you're just losing muscle throughout the prep. Not good. So yeah, don't have a think about that. It works very, very well. All right, guys, I'll call it there. We'll be at part 4 tomorrow. So see you then.